Welcome to the Digital Lifestyle Show. Coming up this week, Gary, Richard and I, we're talking the latest news from Build. We've got Windows Insider news, Windows 10X news and lots more. So let's get straight to the show. Gary, Richard, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Here we are again in Teams. We've been doing this virtual thing for, years. And here we are back again for our regular look at the week's news. And I think we've got quite a few things to talk about. There's all the initial stuff coming out of Build as we record on Tuesday evening. There's new Power Toys and Linux things, all sorts of stuff. There's new builds of Windows 10, some patch news, May update news, and lots more. So where do we start this evening then with, I guess we should start with Build. Yep. Gary, are you excited?
It's the year of the Linux desktop, Ian. The year.
It is
yeah.
Indeed.
Just who would have thought it would have come from Microsoft?
Well, I'm wearing my red polo shirt in honour of Scott Guthrie because he always does these.
And I, there we go.
You've got your Build shirt on.
Yeah, Build shirt from 2019.
So, are you excited about the Windows subsystem for Linux 2 then, Richard?
That is literally the only thing I'm excited about. Yes, yes. I think it's very, very exciting. I think it's a bit of a shame the pre-record, because obviously I think some of the keynotes were quite clearly very pre-recorded because they said that WSL2 was shipping now, and of course, as we all know, the May 2020 update isn't out just yet. So
no.
yeah,
I'll just check, but I don't think it is.
I think it might be soon.
I mean, I did hit. We're recording this on Tuesday. I did hit refresh, and it's not there yet. Although I am told by a few insiders that it's going to come in a couple of days. It's like it's almost here. So
it's out there for some people. So
it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So taking aside the fact that they the Windows subsystem for Linux 2 was obviously. That was the big thing of Build last year because it meant that there was a Linux kernel inside Windows. This year, obviously, it's still not out. It's still not. I mean, but that's through no fault. I think of the WSL itself. It's just because Windows 10 has been delayed for whatever reason. The 20H1 version has been delayed. But of course, the big thing at Build for me was the arrival of two things, which was one, the graphical user interface for Linux apps. So you can now run graphical Linux apps on the Windows desktop, which is great. Again, you've still got to fire them up through the command line, but at the moment it's looking really good. And the other thing, of course, is a GPU pass-through. And again, we're getting very nerdy and not consumery here. But what's great about that, I think, is it kind of removes the last roadblocks. If you were looking to do any kind of Linux development on Windows, you can now use those GPUs in your NVIDIA cards or whatever to run things like machine learning and data and analysis. And I think actually Scott Hansman did a very good demonstration of when he was casual. So, let's just do this wonderful thing here. Isn't this clever? Showing actually how machine learning could be deployed in WSL2. So that for me was a big thing. Obviously, it's not out yet. It'll be in the Windows Insider Ring in a few months' time. But at the moment, it's that for me was the great thing. Apart from it was stuff that we already knew was coming. So
go back to we'll go back to the Linux on the desktop. So the Linux desktop. So I've got my Surface Go here with WSL2 installed. It's on the fast ring, and of course, this, like I said, this is coming to the May 2020 update. So it could hit this week, it could hit next week. We don't really know yet. So I've got the command line up now using Windows Terminal. I could actually launch a Linux application that has a GUI, so that maybe the file tools or something like that.
Not on that one. No, you've got to wait for the version that they demoed, which is coming in probably the June-July timeframe. Much like how WSL2 appeared in Insider Rings, that appeared a few months after they announced it last year at Build. This will come down again to Insider Rings. So it's not there yet. It's coming. I mean, the thing is, you can actually do graphical Linux apps already. With WSL, you can use an X server. What Microsoft have done is they've gone down the Wayland approach. I'm not going to go into the massive nerdy details there, and so it's far more seamless. There's no faffing around with launching an X server, doing all the config stuff. It simply, as I understand it, will just work. And,
so if there was a tool that work better on Linux than Windows. Say like a file as GZ compression tool or something. I always find they work better on Linux.
Yeah, possibly, or maybe Gnome Builder. I mean, it's really aimed at. I mean, this again, we're getting very developer here, but this is aimed at developers. So,
well, let's face it, it is the developer conference.
Yeah.
But I actually think this is quite important from a consumer point of view, particularly in the smart home world, because a lot of the packages which for the smart home are Linux based, and it means you're not going to have to run multiple machines. You could have a single desktop running both your Windows stuff and your Linux stuff. So I think it's really good.
Mm.
So what you're referring to the May 2020 update was the fact that WSL 2 is available.
That's right, because WSL 2, I mean, again, it's been a long time coming because they announced that last year at Build, and the change there, which I mean that was in many ways a much bigger change than this is, because what that did, that basically dropped the Linux kernel into Windows 10. So we got very excited about that. I'm sure if you listen back to the shows around then, we were jolly excited back then. In fact, I think I may have. Did I drag Richard Hayne for that one? I can't remember.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. So we all got
a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So we all got really excited about that. And then it appeared in 20H1, of course. Back then we thought 20H1 would be out by now. So we're in this weird situation where they have. In fact, again, you could see the weirdness actually in Build because they were talking about the WSL2 being out now. It was shipping in Windows, and of course we all know it's not. And I imagine that pre-record was done when they still thought it would be out for Patch Tuesday. Of course, it's still not out. So, although I don't know, Gary, I mean, you obviously watched it too. Did you find the Q&A a bit strange? And they still kept insisting that it was shipping now, and you think, well, not in the one that's going to the public, it's not. So.
Well, it depends where you go. Maybe they've decoupled it.
Well, yeah. Again, they have. I mean, once 20H1 is out, what would be great is, of course, it is decoupled, so you can. It's there's many things in 20H1 which would be a lot easier when it finally sees the light of day.
Maybe you could install it through the package manager.
Probably not. But carry on. But Gary, off you go.
Well, that was another announcement today.
That's a good link.
Yeah, go with it.
So, which is demoed by being able to install the terminal app just on a new build, just by running up the new Windows package manager to download it. It's a bit like all the package managers on Linux and things. You'll be able to install all these odd bits and pieces without going to a Windows store to install them. Just install them in the terminal, like all good old people used to do.
Yeah, it's going back to my roots. I used to keep a little notebook with me all the time, which had useful commands that I would write down. You know, like Xcopy and all these kind of long things that were really useful, but I couldn't, pre-Google. And then I could open my notebook. I had to do that. I've got it in my notebook. Now it's in OneNote.
I mean, I can see some uses for that. I mean, you could actually put together a small script which actually got your perfect environment set up for you with all your little tools and bits and pieces, and having to go off and find everything from stores and download them. So, yeah, it's got some advantages. Yeah,
for sure, it's a good tool. And the other thing, of course, they showed off was Windows Terminal, which again was the thing that appeared last year at Build, has hit version 1.0 at last.
Yeah, it's actually out, official, and all that.
Yeah, that's kind of funny because I've been using it for so long now.
Yeah.
And I do really find that really useful. It's a very useful tool that that's one of those applications that I have running all the time with multiple tabs open. It's very handy.
Yeah.
I do like that. So that's version 1.0. So I think it was it was a beta version, wasn't it, that was in the store before?
Yeah, I mean, it's been there. I mean, they did go through a phase of trying to match like the 1903 and 1904 convention, but they wisely went back to say no, it's version 0.9, 0.10, 0.11, and which was much better, I think.
Yeah.
But Windows Terminal is actually it's a really neat shell. So again, if you're into your command lines and lines at all, it's probably the thing you should be using in Windows now, really.
Yeah, like I said, it's pinned on my taskbar at the bottom here. It's it's the next one after the File Explorer. It's I have it open all the time. Every time I do anything networking, you want to ping something, whatever. Like I mentioned, one of the things that I was doing the other day was I downloaded some logs from my web server, and they're in that GZ format, and just dropped straight into the Linux command line and unpacked them that way, rather than thinking about installing the tool that would do it through Windows. It's just worked, and it was in my downloads folder. It doesn't matter. It was downloaded using the new Edge or whatever, and it's just one tool, that the command line tool. We did multiple tabs that works for me, so I do like that.
And of course, the other thing, again, annoyingly, which they plugged as like a here now feature, and it's not here now, was of course you can really easily browse through your Linux distro through File Explorer, which again they showed off, which makes life so much easier to sort of, to shunt files to shunt files to and fro and whatever else. It's just again, they said it was here now, just a few more days to go.
Yeah, and if you're in the new on the latest fast-ring builds, it doesn't crash either. If you click in there, but yeah, it works great. I think that integration is really well done, and the mark of the new Microsoft, how they integrate things with open source community.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I spoke to some of the team from Canonical who do the Ubuntu Linux distribution, and their take was, it's a real sign that Microsoft are definitely here. Yeah, they are here to stay, because we of all people are aware of Microsoft having a habit of going version 1, version 2, board, move on. But it does seem that they are here to stay in terms of the open source approach.
I wonder how many, given the numbers of Windows installs and how many people may try this WSL2, how long before Windows is the most used Linux system?
Probably quite. Oh, yeah, most Linux system. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that occurred to me, because again, I was talking to the guys from Canonical and saying, well, how do you actually make money out of this? Because obviously Linux is a wonderful thing. It was open source, free. It's wonderful. Companies like SUSE and Canonical, they have to make money from somewhere. They've got to pay employees. And they said, well, the thing is, people, they tend to use it in WSL, and it's like, it's a gateway, because then they'll start using it, in Azure or wherever else, and they'll start paying for their support contracts, because of course they make their money through their support contracts, which seem to be, interesting things. So you say, I do. Yes, it is an interesting question. Will this end up being the most used version of Linux in the end? If you think how many things you actually need to use Linux for, because most people, I guess you've got two camps in the Linux front, haven't you? You got the guys who hate anything to do with Microsoft, would never go near Microsoft. They will always have Linux or another open source for us on the desktop. And you have the other ones who are using it because they have to do a particular task. And they have to, or more likely, they need to test out some code, because let's face it, in Azure, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think more than half of all the VMs now are running Linux, aren't they?
It's something like that, yeah.
Some huge amount. It's a large proportion of code on Azure is Linux. So you have to develop that and test it locally. And there are a few options. If you're using Windows, you can use Hyper-V. You could use, say, Canonical's Multipass. But most people do end up having to need, an actual machine. But of course, the more things you do through WSL2, then it's an interesting approach. I mean, it's interesting.
And the other stuff that they announced, or some of the things that they announced, that there was a lot of obviously developer stuff that we probably, not really something we're going to particularly now. But Gary, was there anything that you think we should be looking at?
Well, I think it's a couple of things which are more in terms of what's going to become available to consumers than actually something consumer focused. There's two fairly big announcements. There's Project Reunion, which I think is going to affect the way desktop apps get produced, particularly the fact it's decoupled from the OS builds. So instead of, at the moment, developers have to wait for the build to hit some sort of ring that they can access to actually start testing stuff on, whereas they'll now be able to download packages and actually run those in their apps and try those out, which is going to go down. And it's a reunion. The idea is to bring bits together, so there won't be 32-bit apps and store apps. All be one nice little bundle up thing, and we'll all be able to use and play happily together and generate stuff out there. But I think there's a lot of detail to go into that, find out how that works. But that's quite interesting. And the other thing I think is a thing called Maui, which is the evolution of Xamarin. And I've talked about Xamarin in this program a lot of times, but basically that's the multi-platform application user interface, which it will be part of .NET 6, and it's basically one project to rule them all, as I said. But basically, developers will be able to write one project and deploy it to virtually every platform out there, be it desktop or mobile. And
Right.
I think that's going to up productivity for developers, but also probably mean that there'll be more apps going cross-platform, because it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to do that going forward than it was previously.
And I suppose that's what Windows needs. So it needs people writing apps for Android and iOS to bring them in, to make them available for Windows as well. So I suppose that's removal of one barrier for the.
It is. I mean, obviously, as Richard said earlier, there's going to be people who are going to stick to their iOS development and Android development because that's what they want to do, and they don't want to touch Microsoft. But if they're .NET developers, then they can definitely write stuff very cross-platform very, very quickly.
Yeah, and I just did. They did do a blog post to sort of talking about the Project Reunion and developing for 1 billion Windows 10 devices and beyond.
Yeah.
And it was about bringing that code together, wasn't it?
Yeah, so Reunion, Maui combined. Not quite sure how those two fit together. They seem to be going opposite directions almost. They should be bringing those two close together, but I'll be interested to see how that all works out. But if it does work out, then I think it's going to make developing a lot easier to do in a productive way across multiple platforms.
Yeah, and the other thing that they did mention as well, which I guess it's not average consumer, but it helps for Windows developers, is the WebView 2. It's something I've used in some of my applications under the WebView where you embed a browser, but that WebView 2 now uses the Chromium engine instead of
which brings it kind of in line, well, much more in line with the web views on the other platforms. So Google's actually a bit behind on what they've got on Android at the moment in terms of what they implement in their web view. So it'd be nice to see if Microsoft would potentially contribute WebView 2 to the Android open source platform. It'd be quite something. But yeah, I mean, it's a powerful tool.
Now, what they didn't talk about today, which I was kind of hoping they would, maybe they will do at some other point, is actual Windows itself. They talked about the platforms and the tools and bringing these, making this easier for developers and unified projects and everything else. But they didn't specifically talk about Windows features or something that's new that was coming to Windows 10 or Windows 10X even for that. I did see some blog posts that was kind of Microsoft reaffirms its commitment to Windows 10, but none of the posts offered anything in detail.
We all got very quiet.
Yeah. Oh, Richard, you're on mute.
That wouldn't have been a post from me, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's, build is only 48 hours long. It's only 48 hours long. An awful lot of it is a very antisocial time for UK viewers. So maybe there will be something in one of the sessions, like a nugget. But I have to say, I've seen nothing.
That'd be a winget.
Yay! I mean, I've seen nothing but the core OS. But then again, you do think to yourself, well, we have had that WSL2. We've had Windows Terminal. So I think the core OS perhaps is less. The core OS is there. It's the core OS. But there's not much more to say than that. I mean, there are maybe some Windows IoT bits and pieces coming down the pipe.
I mean,
one of the. Sorry, go ahead, Gary.
I was just going to say there's definitely some IoT sessions coming up.
Yeah, and I've got them in my schedule. If they're in an hour where I won't be sleeping, then I might be able to have a look at those. But what I was. I've seen a few blog posts today saying that they may be Microsoft may be bringing some Windows 10X features to Windows 10, maybe the application containerization features or something like that, but nothing specific. Yeah,
I mean, they're definitely bringing Linux containers to Windows 10 IoT. That's definitely happening, but it's on the roadmap. That's more really around making IoT Edge work better. So. As far as Windows 10X functionality in Windows 10, I've seen nothing yet in build to make me think that's happening anytime soon. But I'm very happy to be corrected on that.
No, what I was hoping, I know it was a bit of a, it was a shot in the dark, but I was hoping that we would get a Windows 10X. Say, hey, we're going to talk about Windows 10X now because it's coming out this year. We've switched focus to single devices. Here's some images for you to download if you want to try these on your physical device, and nothing of that have we.
Well, exactly. I mean, my hope with that was when Scott Hansman did his little spiel, his sort of pre-recorded keynote. It ended with him talking to Panos Panay, and I thought that is a chance to get the 10x thing plugged or something, and there was nothing at all. So I went into this hoping that we would see some 10x, as you say, a 10x ISO which you can put on machines, or just something that's not an emulator. And at the moment, I'm losing hope. But we are at the start of the 48 hours. Ask me again in 48 hours time.
Yeah, there are more keynotes to come, effectively. So
Exactly.
maybe. So as people listen to this, they'll be shouting at the podcast app saying, "Yeah, you missed it." But I'm not sure. I mean, I was hoping we might even, the worst case, we would get a new Windows 10 X emulation image. Say, here's some of the work we've been doing, because it's a couple of months now since we had a 10X image, but no sign of that yet.
And did you also notice the fact that while they were quite happy to show the Duo again, I do wonder actually what level you got to be in Microsoft to get a Duo. But
it's got
there was
level.
Exactly, but not a sniff of the Neo now. No, just not mentioned at all. It's always been airbrush from history.
Yes, maybe I'm. Well, as we mentioned last week, Panos Panay's post alluded to holidays 21. I think is when with the Duo. Yeah, so well, he didn't specifically say that for the Neo, but he did say that, look at this holiday. I think his wording was this holiday and next holiday. So this holiday for the single screen devices, and probably next. Maybe the Duo will never see the light of day now.
Neo, you mean Neo?
Sorry, Neo.
The Duo will. I think.
Yeah. But I'm surprised they didn't talk about the 10X being, as they specifically mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, that they're switching to a single screen focus. But like I said, it's not over yet, and it could be that they're just not ready to talk about it yet. The bits aren't ready, and they need to shunt that forward to sometime in the summer, which is fine, but just I was hoping.
It is fine, but it's getting very tight now. We need to keep on. It is now mid to end of May, and if they're going to seriously ship some devices running the DSOS in time for the holidays, it's getting tight.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other lots of PR we're getting from Microsoft is that Windows is back in focus, and they've realised how important it is through these times now where everyone is now using Windows devices. But we might not see the fruits from that till next year. But I don't know. Windows was kind of put. It used to be the very first thing talked about at developer conferences, and then in the last few years it was shoved to the back of the conference. There was a bit of movement on this time, but it's still not really. It's not center stage, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only rebuttal I'd have to that is of course there was the Windows subsystem Linux, which of course is that that's Windows 10.
Yep.
And I think Project Reunion that Garry mentioned is again trying to bring Windows front and center. Although I do wonder how much developer fatigue that's going to suffer from, because obviously yet again the goalposts are moving once more. It's like okay, you must do this, you must do that, and now this is a new big thing, and you think I think those are going to go. I mean, we've experienced the Windows Phone thing where they change the platform every few years. You think, developers just going to give up and walk away.
Brian Linux said on Twitter that it's very much like the Windows 10 mobile Windows Phone thing again. So yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I've actually steered clear of Windows development in the last couple of years because I just didn't know which direction it was going in, and it'd be nice to actually have some certainty.
Well, to be frank, I mean, Garry, I mean, you're more you're more Xamarin focused, aren't you? Which I think really that seems to be the way it's going. I'm
going to have to get my Hawaiian shirt on and go Maui.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yes, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, certainly, I like the fact that is cross-platform in reality as well. That it's not just going to be Android, iOS. It's going to be Android, iOS, Windows, and Mac. And plus have a few other platforms as well. And I think that's really key. And it does actually make me wonder where Windows development actually fits in this.
Well, is anybody writing any new Win 2 apps anymore?
Well, yeah, especially with Reunion, there shouldn't be. But I mean, people line of business apps do, but I have to say most of the line of business apps I'm seeing these days are shifting over to no code. I mean, the Power Apps and integration, because they're relatively easy to do. I mean, say no code is little or no code is what they call it, isn't it? There's still quite a bit of code in some of those ones I've seen, but but yeah, that seems to have been the big shift in the last 2 or 3
Yeah.
years. That's coming across
And-
quite drastically.
And of course, it's you can't avoid code because you have to implement your line of business rules somewhere in the app. It's just, of course, the Power Apps mean you don't have to worry about all the grungy UI stuff and connectivity as well. It's all it's in there already. It's just you just need to work out how your business works. So
which is good. I mean, I think that's the way to go, and it does bring this whole concept of citizen developers in. And I think that's actually something which could be a consumer approach as well. The idea, I mean, the thing they demonstrated with the lights, the Lifix lights they had, where they're tied into teams, so that when you're busy in teams, your red light comes on, so your kids don't disturb you. Well, sometimes they don't disturb you. And that sort of thing, I think could be quite powerful. Some of the stuff which is built in there for controlling home automation stuff. I mean, I could actually see writing a home automation system using something like Power Apps as a possibility.
It's. I think for that side of it, I wonder they need to be able to use some of the low cost devices as well, like the Pi and thing. That's the only thing that's kind of missing, I think, from that. Unless you can hook into it from Linux on the Pi. I don't know.
Well, the Pi, I mean, obviously, IoT Edge is the thing for the Pi, isn't it? And I mean, you will be able to run things like SQL on SQL Edge on the Pi as well.
Yeah.
But I'm running a Windows 10 IoT app done in Visual Studio on my Pi 3, which has got my temperature control system on, which we talked about. But I can't run that on the Pi 4.
Yeah, see, I'm not sure if Windows 10 IoT on the Pi is going to be a thing much longer. I don't know.
No, well, it isn't now. You can't buy, if you bought a Pi 4 now, it doesn't work. So
as far as IoT is concerned, I mean, Microsoft, I think it's got a very confused IoT story at the moment, because it's got like kind of almost 4 systems, isn't it? You got there's Azure Sphere, which finally launched back in February. Took a long time to get out. That did. They bought a company, and they're now doing Azure Real-Time Operating System (RTOS), which I think has gone to general availability during build. Then there's Windows 10 IoT Core, Windows 10 IoT Enterprise. So there's a lot of, I mean, they're kind of covering all the ground there, but I think the focus is probably going to be more on the Azure RTOS and the Azure Sphere rather than Windows 10 IoT, because that's while they're planning to squash the footprint of Windows 10 down to I think someone said about 400 megs, a really small number, which is what you've got to do to fit it onto a device as small as a Pi, or well, it wouldn't be a Pi, but it'd be a small device. Ultimately, I think their focus for IoT is actually more down Azure RTOS and Azure Sphere, because Azure RTOS, Ian, would do the kind of controls you're after. Because what they've also unveiled at Build as well is all the GUI tools, which are the designer tools, which can do some really nice things aimed at doing temperature and other kinds of controls.
Yeah, that's what I want. I mean, mine's kind of a hook together piece, but using IFTTT and Google Sheets and all sorts. But yeah, it'd be nice to have a way of doing that properly. I guess that's not sort of my basic way of doing it.
Yeah. So, but I mean, my concern as far as IoT and Microsoft is concerned is they do seem to have quite almost a confused story. It seems there's all kinds of different teams doing different things, and I'm a little concerned. I know Satya that was very keen on saying that they were very keen to avoid missing the boat this time round on IoT devices, having missed the boat on mobile devices, missed the boat on consumer devices. Now they're going for the IoT market, which there are billions and billions out there. But they do seem to have. It seems a bit confused. There's lots and lots of different solutions doing different things. Build appears to have unified some under the IoT Central, but it still feels to me a bit like there's too many things going on at the moment. I mean, what do you guys think?
It's a messy. I think it's messy at the moment. I don't even know which way to look at the moment. I should do really. I mean, most IoT work is currently going on Linux. That seems to be the way it's going at the moment.
Which I think is why they're bringing the Linux containers to Windows 10 IoT.
Yeah. Very strange. And I mean, I'm not sure they haven't already missed the boat, to be honest.
Which I think is a shame. I mean, I think Azure Sphere was a real chance and that just seemed to get delayed and delayed and delayed. I mean, machines were supposed to be on the shelves, well, a long time ago, and it's only really been February since they've made it out of the preview stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the IT stuff that they do, it just seems to be aimed more at sort of enterprise. As usual with Microsoft, it's very much enterprise stuff. There doesn't seem to be much at the lower end for hobbyists or anything. Which, okay, I know that hobbyists might not be their market, but sometimes that's how you start and you build your way up. But it seems to be, if you want to use cheap devices like the Pi, ready available to Pi, then Microsoft route isn't for you.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Although as I say, you will be able to do things like running SQL Edge on Raspberry Pi, which I'm going to try and do this week. So next week, check back in, and I'll let you know how I got on.
Okay. Yeah, let's go. I'll ask you about that. So those were most of the announcements today at Build. Like I said, I wanted to hear TEDx stuff. I didn't, but I can't say I'm really that surprised. That its time will come, I guess. But I just want to get testing that next. There was one other thing that was kind of mentioned today. I don't know, it was specifically tied to the Build announcement. It was the new Power Toy update.
Yeah.
Which has the new run tool, which I've been playing about with today, and I actually really like it.
Yeah, I love Power Tools. I love Power Tools.
Yeah, I mean Power Tools Power Toys is one of those.
Sorry,
Power Toys. You said Power Tools, and I said Power Tools.
I said it. Yeah.
They need to change the name.
Power Tools. Yeah. No, it's Power Tools, because we're basically flashing back to Windows. I mean, admittedly, it's nowhere near as dangerous as the stuff you had in Windows 95. Where I can remember having to undo some hideous things that were done with Tweak UI, which just broke.
Tweak UI, I still love that.
No, yeah, you loved it. I had to administer systems. I hated it with a passion. So I say, "Oh, look what I've done!" It's, yes, you've ruined your entire desktop. Wonderful, and I've got to fix it. So, but yeah, so Power Toys is great. It appeared last year, I think, didn't it? And they've just been adding, fancy zones, which I think Scott Hanson showed off being the window manager, so you can sort of position windows and things, and it's had the Alt Tab function. So when you have lots and lots of windows open, you can search for windows.
Yeah.
Rather than Alt Tabbing through, which is, once you've used it once, you never go back. And now, I always run things by hitting Windows and then typing to search for the application. And now I just do Windows space and you start typing in things, and it's. I hate to sound like a fanboy, but it's brilliant. I think it's fantastic. It's stuff that should be in Windows now.
Yeah. It works really well, and it's I've just got it installed, and you just start typing, and it's there, and you've got the option of running it as an admin or opening the folder or whatever you want. It's a really handy little tool.
I must admit, one thing I really love is that keyboard remapper when I'm moving from the Mac to the PC. Just be able to shift things around, so I don't keep thinking, where the muscle memory is such a key thing.
Exactly, yeah, it is great, and of course it also shows you all the standard keyboard shortcuts too, which I kind of regard it as having like your very own gentleman on your keyboard, because of course Jen's one of the Windows team, and she spends her time tweeting shortcut keys out pretty much. And it's wonderful. You press it, oh, that's what I can do that, and then once you've I always remember learning about pressing the Windows key and M to minimize all windows, and that was life transforming.
Yeah. Clint Ruckus and his team have done a fabulous job on Power Tools, I have to say. It's really good.
And interesting that I noticed that you have to install the .NET Core as well as part of the new version.
Yes, yeah.
First time I had to do that.
Is it auto updating as of 0.18? Because I know that was coming down.
17, I think, enabled that. Yeah. But I had the older version on, so I had to install it, and I've got that on there now. So that is going to be my new way of running it. Like you, I use the search box to launch applications. I very rarely hunt around for the icon, so I think this is going to be my new way of working.
Yeah, that's right. As I said, it does work really well. It's it's one of the. I'm going to sound a bit jaded now, but Jason, but it's one of the few things that gets me really excited about Windows, when you see these useful things where people are fixing what's basically broken in Windows. You think this should be part of the core now, so maybe it will be soon.
I think that there's certainly been some discussions, I think, around whether certain bits should go into the core, and it's good. I just love the name for that alt tab thing. Actually, it's called, the actual proper name within the utility is Window Walker.
Yeah.
This is what it is. I just love that name.
Absolutely right. It's good fun, and of course, the real joy of Power Toys as well is if you are a massive nerd like me, and probably you guys as well, is of course it's all in GitHub. So it's like the point 18 stuff is of no surprise because we've seen the code going through the pools, the PRs happening. It's good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so maybe we'll see some of these features in future versions of Windows, but it's nice to see them in a tool like that. They can rapidly release them and make tweaks and everything else, so they don't have to wait for insider builds for that. We did have some insider builds news last week. We now seem to be on a weekly cadence for new fast ring builds, and we got 19628 last week, and actually there was a new feature in it, or in the underlying system anyway, that was quite interesting. I think we may have mentioned this in the past, but it's the first time I've seen it in action, which was DNS over HTTPS.
Or DO! Yeah, so DNS over HTTPS. And again, you guys, please correct me if I'm going off piece there. This is basically an update of how DNS works. DNS being the domain name server. So whenever you type in a URL in your browser or whatever, it will ping out to a domain name service, which will then return back the information. Well, it will talk about the address of where you need to go to, which is all great. The problem is the service itself originates from a much more innocent time, and so it's all done in plain text. Easy to spy on, easy to man in middle attacks, and sort of direct people to where they shouldn't really be going. And so what DNS over HTTPS does is it does the same thing, except it encrypts it over HTTPS. So in theory, you can't snoop on it, you can't spy on it, it's all secure, and it's great. The only slight problem with it is I think a few countries like to use DNS as a way of blocking things and checking what citizens are doing, which I think is made harder by using DOL. But of course, the likes of Firefox, I think Firefox made it default, didn't they, in the US? I think it's in Chrome as well. What Microsoft have done in 19628 is they've made it part of the OS, which quite frankly is where it should be, because the last thing you want is a browser overriding what the OS does. It's an admin nightmare. So it's kind of, I mean, I think it's good if you're into private. If you're into private, I think it's great. It's in preview, obviously, in the fast ring, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this appear very quickly in slow ring and then release builds. And that's all I have to say about it.
I enabled it, gave it a try. At the moment, you've got to go to the registry and create a registry key.
Yeah,
I think hacked. Yeah, they did say that won't be there in the future, and that registry key won't be used for it in the future. So it'll be one of those features that will be into the slow ring when the slow ring becomes the next version of Windows 10 once the May update's out the door. But I tested it and it worked, and they even have a little tool as well which you can view all your queries. Yeah, which I didn't know about that either. So
isn't that scary? When you use a tool the first time, you think, crikey, that's much plain text is being set up for my machine. Oh goodness me! It's also worth pointing out as well that there's only 3 DNS servers it supports right now, which is Cloudflare, Google, and Quad9 as well. But of course, when it's released, there'll be a whole load more.
Yeah. I'm not sure how that would work with your home router. With your home router, would have to support it, wouldn't it? So because normally if you're using DHCP, your home router picks up the DNS.
Yeah.
So I suppose if you want extra security, you've got to go into your home router and change it from your ISP's DNS to be Cloudflare or Google, or unless your ISP supports it, I suppose.
Yes, it could be a world of pain.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I can imagine people taking machines home and the DNS not working correctly. But yeah, it's good to see it working in Windows. I think it's where it should be. It should be abstracted from the browser, and it should be in the OS. So that's the right place. That was the only really significant change with the build, apart from the build string.
Oh, what the MN release versus the is this the manganese thing? I'm trying.
It is, yeah. I was guessing that was it, but it's been actually confirmed. I saw someone tweet it, and it's manganese branch. So the fast ring is currently on manganese branch, and they said they're expecting fast ring to switch over to iron branch towards the later part of June, which will expose new functionality to insiders. So there you go. So it's just their internal branches. I guess they just have a code name. Normally, I guess you wouldn't, as a consumer or as an end user, you don't care about this. But for us, insiders like to know these things.
Fastering, yeah. And I think that they were they're just practicing that they could change insiders from one branch to another, and in preparation for this this grand change. So it's clear as mud, basically. Which is kind of the fastering in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Hopefully this renewed focus will do something about the frankly dreadful communication that comes out of the Windows Insider team.
We do know that the slow ring and release preview haven't had an update since last week, so I think that build will be the one that goes out, unless there's one this week. I don't think there will be.
No.
I think that's going to go out to seekers, as they like to call them. I don't know. Let's hope it's this week. I don't know. It's before the end of May.
I mean, I've seen some tweets from Microsoft, people saying it is this week. I've heard from other people saying it's actually going to be probably next week. So would make sense if you can do it this week. You need to kind of have done it now, really, to give people a chance to fix it. So if I was a betting man, I'd say 25th or 26th of May.
Yeah, next Tuesday probably.
Yeah,
and then once they do that frees up then the slow ring, isn't it? They would leave release preview on the May update for a while to test servicing patches. Slow ring, then they've got a decision then, haven't they? Because we've not had this before. Because normally the fast ring just switches straight to slow, but in this case, flash ring doesn't mean anything, but slow ring does. Yeah. So at some point they've got to say, well, which features are going to make it to slow ring, therefore 20H2.
Yeah. I mean, I would think. I mean, they did this last year, didn't they, with 19H2, which didn't appear until very, very close to release. So, I mean, I'm hoping there'll be some more information in some of the Windows Insider sessions during build, because at the moment, I do joke about the legendarily bad communication for the Windows Insider team, but I think they need to clear this up this time around, because we don't want a repeat of the weirdness of last year, where we had Microsoft redefining when seasons happened to sort of fit in with their Windows releases came. So.
I think it's just they can't just promote, for example, 19628 to slow ring, because the current fast ring is just features that may make it there in the future, and I guess they have to cut some of those features and enable some of those features and shove those to slow ring, and that as soon as it hits slow ring, it's kind of committed then to those features, aren't they?
I mean, I suspect they'll basically increment the slow ring by one number again.
Yeah.
And then basically they'll start to put things in there, and then just increment the patch.
Turn them on and off. Yeah. Yeah. That's what they did last year, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they'll probably do that.
Absolute speculation on my part there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, for all of us. And I hope then that means then that fast ring then can get some nice new features, because they don't have to worry about stability for fast ring, but I'm not sure there's what's in the pipeline.
Linux GUI for
yeah. There you go. There's a fast ring.
I think it'll be that, and that's. I'm not sure. You see, again, I come back to. I'm not sure what else you're going to do with the core OS, because I mean, I think they made the mistake years ago of just trying to shove in nonsense, I would call it, into Windows to try and excuse, okay, let's do a build, let's just shove stuff in like timeline, which no one really wanted to. I mean, obviously enthusiasts enjoy it, no one actually cared about timeline or groups and things, and I think they thought, well, perhaps we just focus on making the core OS really stable. So I wonder if perhaps we're going to see less of the whiz-bang features as part of the core OS. We'll see more as things like Windows Terminal, Power Toys being developed outside of the core OS, and Edge is a good example as well.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah,
I mean, that's one of the things I was thinking with the Power Toys argument, the fact it's part of the should be part of the operating system. Maybe it shouldn't be, because people don't always want them. Remember, we always used to have to go in and actually install bits of the operating system.
Yes, you could
choose what you want.
Yeah.
And I think that's more how it should be. But they could be separate packages which you could always install from the operating system. Make them, but surface them more. I mean, I think the problem with the Power Toys is it's not visible. Nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
And if you actually made that part of the operating system, say when it starts up, do you want to install PowerToys as your onboarding experience?
Well, PowerToys, it does hark back to PowerToys does hark back to Windows 905. So perhaps we do need a plus pack.
Oh, plus pack. Yeah, I love the plus pack. Yeah,
the plus pack was great, wasn't it?
With all the extra sound schemes and things.
Yes.
Yeah. Bring back now they've brought PowerToys back. I think we should start a campaign to bring back plus pack. You heard it here first.
Pinball. Yeah. It's a video pinball, and then breaking news. I can see in build they've open source media center. They haven't. I haven't. No, sorry, they haven't.
So, the show title this week: Bring back plus pack.
Bring back plus pack. Yeah, I like that.
Okay, there we go. I tell you what, they could use the fast ring for the testing the Win32 container system that is in Windows 10X. Just include that in a build.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, it's a way of testing because that effectively that's the core of Windows 10X that needs testing the most. So stick that in fast ring. And
I would love to be a fly on the wall in those conversations that must be happening right now at Microsoft about. So how do we get 10X out to insiders? Because it's like we can't just shunt it out. It's going to be a whole new thing. So it's because it's a fundamentally different OS under the hood. So it's basically an orchestrator now. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, stick some of the subsystems in the fast ring. Get them on your fast ring device. I'll be doing videos of Windows 10X subsystems. Yay!
I would like to see you include the upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 10X in your big upgrade video, Ian, because you know what? That's not going to work.
No, I don't think I'll be doing that. I did do a video this week of something that isn't breaking news, but found it was interesting, and it's something I didn't know. So I've got a Surface Dial I talked about on the show, and it's been in my drawer here for 2 years, something like that.
Yep.
Occasionally pulled out to do a bit of volume control. And then I remember, I'm sure you could do more of this. So I checked in Windows, and I don't remember seeing this when I got it, but you can do custom apps and custom menus to go with custom apps. And I figured out how to use it with the video timeline in Camtasia Studio. So when I'm doing an edit and I'm going through the timeline, my Surface Dial, I can turn it left and it scrolls left, and turn it right and scrolls right, and I can wheel it like a jog shuttle on a video system, and it works really well. Now I'm sure probably people have seen my video and thought, well, surely you should have known that already, but I just, it's one of those things. I bought it, played around with it, put it in the drawer, and didn't get it out. So now I'm actually using it again. So I've got it working with Adobe Audition. I've got it working with Word, so I can scroll left to go through words in Word and then tap to select the word. It's actually really useful, and it's something that when Microsoft showed the dial off, they showed it on the screens and controlling graphics tools and things like that. But I'm not doing a whole lot of graphics work, so it's probably why I didn't use it much. But I actually found it really useful. And in Camtasia Studio, when you're doing I use it for video editing, a lot of the hands-on videos. The split tool is what I obviously use a lot to cut the track and select bits and take it out. So just tapping the dial is the split tool now. So I turn it left to get to the right place, or right, and tap split, and it's suddenly useful again. So it's back on my desk now. So I'll do a video of that, because there's bound to be someone that has done the same as me. So hopefully there is anyway. Anyway, so if you've got a Surface Dial in your drawer, get one out, because it can be really useful. As long as the application that you're using has got a keyboard shortcut, then you can emulate that with the dial. So anything, it should work with anything. Work Visual Studio, whatever you want. Right, what else did we have this week? I did another video as well. I had another go at doing a AltSpace news video. So a little 5-minute news of the latest Windows Insider news using AltSpace. Really learning some of the editing techniques using AltSpace. It's quite interesting. Still not quite got the audio how I like it, but anyway, it's there. I'll put it on our YouTube channel. So I think by the time we do our next full AltSpace recording, I would have a bit more experience with capturing that audio and video, so that when we do it, we get a good podcast out of it. So what else did we have? I think that's everything I had, actually. Oh, I know there was something I was going to ask you about, Richard. You mentioned on your on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I've seen you tweeting it, and I think you had it on the register as well. Something that's quite important for us is some of the British computing history museums, the various ones, are all really struggling at this time. And I know you highlighted it on your blog, but I wanted to mention it on the show this week.
Yeah, it's good call. Yeah, this is basically. I mean, there are a number around the UK. There's one in Leicester which I also failed to mention, I'm afraid. But two.
Well, that's the Retro Computing Museum, I think it is. Isn't it?
Yeah. So and they're all, and also the ones I mentioned in particular were the National Museum of Computing, which is based in Bletchley Park. That's got the rebuild of the Colossus. It's where the code breaking happened, and they have a whole range of retro machines. From things like BBC Micros, Sinclairs, all the way down to mini computers and mainframes from
those giant disk things that
well, exactly,
Garry saw when we looked around there. Yeah.
and the thing is, they actually work. I mean, there's an Elliott 803 that runs, which because obviously it's this month is the 60th anniversary of Algol 60. Which is one of the very first. If you use the likes of JavaScript or Pascal, or whatever, you'll be very familiar with Algol because you can trace it back to Algol 60, which is great. But these machines are still running amazingly. But of course, the problem is they've been shut down due to obviously the current virus situation. Shall we say? They've had to close their doors. The same applies to the. I think it is the. Centre for Computing History in Cambridge. Again, that's another great place. It's basically an industrial unit, contains tons of machines that you'll remember from when you were kids, or there's a whole 1970s office and things with Commodore PETs and stuff, all of which function. You can sit down and have a play on them. They all work and they're all usable. And if you've got any interest at all in computing, it's a wonderful place. They're both wonderful places to go to, as is the place in Leicester. But of course, they've all had to close their doors. They're all run by volunteers, and their revenues come from visitors and events, which have all been stopped. So they've all created like crowdfunders and just giving pages to try and encourage. I mean, they're not asking for huge, millions and millions. They're asking for thousands and thousands to actually survive the current situation. So, Ian, if you want to drop the links in the show notes, I think it's well worth. I owe where I am today in computing to retro machines. I used to use a TI-99, I used a Commodore PET, ZX80, a VAX VMS, 30, 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be a real shame if people aren't able to go and see these machines running and functioning, which I think there's a very real chance that these places could close for good.
It would be a great shame.
I think it would be a great cultural loss, because people would be very quick to complain about works of art or historical artifacts being lost. But these things are history. They are. If you're at all a computing nerd or you owe a career to computing, these things are historical artifacts, and I think it's very important to support them. And I'll now get off my soapbox.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We had the Centre for Computing History up at our events when they came up to our events up north, and they had a fantastic display, and they go around the country doing that normally, which helps fund their work, which they can't do at the moment. So yeah, absolutely. If you any interest in that, I'll include links in the show notes, and hopefully it won't be too long before we can get out to these events. I mean, we were talking, it just shows you really, if you think of doing things, sometimes you should just get on and do them. Because I think one thing we talked about among ourselves was going there to do a show recording, and we never got around to it yet last year, and now we can't. So yeah, support these things while they're here, and hopefully then they'll be available to visit, and so future generations will be able to visit and laugh at what little devices we had in the 70s and 80s and whatever. But and it's not just PCs or Spectrums or anything. They've got games and phones and all sorts of things. I think it's hard for when the kids see it. They're just amazed at this how basic and primitive it is. But I mean, for anyone of our age group, it was cutting edge at the time.
Yeah, and, exactly.
I mean, certainly I wouldn't be doing this podcast or even my day job if it wasn't for the my grandparents buying me a ZX81. So and that's the kind of thing that's at the museum. It's a British, I know we're talking British, and I'm sure there's the similar situations with other countries' museums, but specifically for the British ones, it was a very British thing in the early 80s, late 70s, and I think well worth supporting.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, what else did we have that we wanted to talk about tonight? I think that's everything I had.
I've got one last thing, which is just to celebrate build. I was sent a a short poem by a reader who gave me these short words which might amuse if you're following Build, which is it's set to the night before Christmas. So and it goes, "'Twas the night before Build, and all through Seattle, no coders were fighting Azure's cloudy battle. No T-shirts this time for attendees to wear. From home came the sessions with nary a care. But look, on my screen, on my tottering teams, Satch Nadella, and a keynote of dreams, with Guthrie and Handsman Kumar as well. And Windows rescued from development hell. With cash in his pockets, he sprang to the stage, insisting that cloud would be all the rage. The talking, however, was mercifully brief, spared from the waffle that gives us such grief. But I heard him exclaim as the last session closed, 'Happy Buildmas to all, and no, you can't have a free duo.'"
Excellent stuff.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a great way to end this week's show. Well, that was brilliant. So, Garry, where can we find you and keep it with your? I know you lot of stuff from Build today on your Twitter feed.
Yeah, at Garry with 2 R's WMA on Twitter. Like links to everything else I do as well. And yes, I'm tweeting a lot about Build and getting retweeted as well, which is quite fun.
Yeah. And Richard, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Richard_Speed, not tweeting about Build.
Yes, well, I've had a few, but I've been supplementing my tweets with my garden exploits and my beer exploits, which is now almost just a week away from bottling my home brew.
You see, Ian, I saw that picture and I thought, wow, Ian's got a really bad bladder infection. You should do that.
Yeah, it's 5.6% alcohol. So that's ready for bottling next week. So we should have TDL beer in the next 8 weeks. I did have a quick try of it. It's a bit sweet yet because it's not quite ready, but it looks all right. And my a vegetable patch, because I decided to grow some vegetables. So I got a vegetable planter and I filled that with all sorts of seeds, and all these things are cropping up now. So yeah, I shall have maybe I shall have a branded fruit and veg stall at some point.
Well, so if it's eight weeks for you, are you going to post a bottle out to Garry and I to sample during the course of the show?
I'll have to do that. Yeah, it should be 8% alcohol, so be careful.
That sounds about
Why
right.
have you made beer that strong?
Well, I didn't make beer that strong because I don't know.
Who made it then?
Well, I made it.
Yeah, so you didn't. Yeah, okay.
But what happened? I was bought a homebrew beer kit last year, for my birthday. So it was last July, and it's been sat in my garage all this time. And I'm always saying to her, I should do that beer, but I've not got time now. And then I was sat outside. I think it was in the Easter, and she said, "You've got time now." And so I was like, well, I couldn't think of an excuse why not to do it, so I did it. But the thing that came with it was an 8% beer. So in my defence, I had no choice but to make 8% beer. Well,
one last bit from Richard Hayes just tweeted this out. They've released the Build with desktop wallpapers, which they've been showing in between sessions.
Oh, very good.
So whichever I guess I'll put that in our discussion, so you can bung it out on the end
on the show notes as well.
So,
Excellent stuff. Well, hopefully we'll be back here same time next week. Ideally, we'll be able to share one of my beers in person. Wouldn't that be nice at some point in the future? We'll see. So yeah, until next week, we'll see you then.
Take care.
Cheerio.
Thanks to Richard and Garry. We'll be back same time, same place next week. You can email me Ian@thislife.com. iSticks on Twitter. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.